An American can arrive in Australia, follow every law, be perfectly polite, and still accidentally break a social rule Australians expect you to know. And the embarrassing part? Nobody may actually tell you. You might just get a strange look, a short answer, or suddenly notice the conversation feels different. Australia has dozens of unwritten social rules that locals learn naturally, but visitors can break without realizing they're doing anything wrong. And today we're counting down 10 Australian rules Americans can accidentally break without even knowing it. Some are so subtle that you might not notice them until you've already done it. And the last one is so deeply connected to Australian culture that most Americans won't realize they've broken it at all. So if you're planning to visit Australia, pay attention, because knowing these could save you from one very awkward first impression. Let's start with number 10. Number 10. Don't assume being friendly means you can skip the queue. Imagine you're standing outside a busy Australian cafe. There's a line of people waiting patiently. You look around, see an empty space near the front, and think, maybe that's where I'm supposed to order. You walk forward and suddenly someone looks at you, not angry, not shouting, just looking. You quickly realize you've just walked past everyone who was waiting. This is one of those situations where an American might not even think they've done anything serious. But in Australia, queuing can carry an important social expectation. Everyone waits their turn. It's not necessarily written on a sign. Nobody has to explain it. The line itself is the explanation. And here's what makes it interesting. Australians can be incredibly casual about many things, but fairness in a queue can be surprisingly serious. You don't need to make a dramatic apology. You simply step back, join the line, and wait. But if you repeatedly try to push ahead, people will notice. So if you're visiting Australia, here's the easy rule. When you see a queue, assume there's a reason for it. And if you're Australian, tell me in the comments, what's the fastest way someone can make an entire queue silently dislike them? Because I have a feeling you already know the answer. Number 9. Don't mistake mate for permission to become instantly familiar. An American arrives in Australia and hears the word mate everywhere. G'day, mate. Thanks, mate. No worries, mate. How are you going, mate? After a few days, the American thinks they've discovered the secret to Australian friendship. They start using mate with everyone. And then they realize something important. Mate doesn't necessarily mean we are close friends. Australian language can be casual and friendly, without automatically meaning you've entered someone's inner circle. That's one of the fascinating things about Australian communication. A person can joke with you, call you mate, and have a relaxed conversation with you without treating the relationship as deeply personal. So, an American who tries to force instant familiarity can accidentally come across as trying too hard. The better approach is simple. Match the energy of the conversation. Be friendly, but let the relationship develop naturally. You don't have to prove you're everyone's new best friend within 5 minutes. And that brings us to number 8. Because this next mistake can happen when an American is actually trying to be polite. Number 8. Don't turn every conversation into a competition about success. Imagine you're meeting Australians for the first time. Someone asks what you do. You explain your job. They ask where you're from. You tell them. Then you start talking about your achievements, your salary, your expensive car, your house, your business, or how successful you've become. In America, confidently talking about your accomplishments can be completely normal in many social situations. But in Australia, there can be a stronger preference for humility and not taking yourself too seriously. That doesn't mean Australians dislike successful people. Far from it. The difference is often in how success is presented. If you can be successful and still laugh at yourself, that can make you easier to connect with. But if every conversation becomes a demonstration of how impressive you are, people may start wondering why you're trying so hard to prove it. And this is one of those rules that can be difficult for visitors, because nobody usually sits you down and explains it. You just notice the energy changing. The conversation becomes shorter. The jokes become sharper. And eventually you realize the Australian you're talking to wasn't asking for your resume. They were just trying to get to know you. So here's a useful Australian social survival tip. Don't hide your achievements, but don't make them your entire personality either. And if you're enjoying this video, hit the like button. It helps more people who are interested to watch. Number 7. Don't assume teasing means someone dislikes you. An American joins a group of Australians. Within 5 minutes, somebody makes a joke about their accent. Then another person jokes about their hometown. Then somebody makes a comment about their sports team. The American starts thinking, why is everyone attacking me? But sometimes the exact opposite is happening. Australian humor can involve teasing, sarcasm, and making fun of yourself or other people as part of normal social interaction. Context matters, of course. Not every joke is friendly, and nobody should assume offensive behavior is automatically acceptable just because someone calls it humor. But when the atmosphere is clearly playful, taking every joke as a personal insult can make things much more awkward. Australians may actually be trying to include you in the conversation. And there is an important secret here. If you can laugh at yourself, you may make the entire interaction easier. Better yet, if you can give a clever joke back without becoming genuinely hostile, you may suddenly find that the conversation gets warmer. The American who spends the first day wondering, "Why is everyone making fun of me?" can become the American laughing along by day 5. But don't force it. You don't need to become a comedian. Just learn to recognize the difference between genuine hostility and playful teasing. Number 6. Don't panic when there's silence. This one sounds incredibly small, but it can reveal a huge cultural difference. An American is talking to an Australian. The conversation is going well. Then suddenly, silence. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. The American's brain starts screaming, "Fix it," so they immediately start talking again. So what do you think about the weather? The Australian looks at them and wonders why they're suddenly discussing the weather. In some Australian social situations, silence doesn't automatically mean something has gone wrong. People can be comfortable sitting together without constantly filling every second with conversation. For an American who interprets silence as awkwardness, this can feel strange. But here's the trick. Don't panic. Let the conversation breathe. A pause isn't necessarily rejection. It isn't necessarily discomfort. Sometimes it's just a pause. And if you're visiting Australia, learning to be comfortable with that can make social interactions feel much easier. You don't have to perform every second. You don't have to constantly prove that you're interesting. Sometimes you can simply sit there and enjoy the moment. And that connects directly to number 5. Number 5. Don't dominate the conversation. Picture a group of Australians having a conversation. Someone tells a story. Another person jumps in. Someone makes a joke. Somebody else changes the subject. There's a rhythm to it. Then an American joins the group and starts telling a long story. It's interesting at first. Then it keeps going and going. And suddenly the American realizes nobody else has spoken for several minutes. They weren't trying to be rude. They were enthusiastic. They were trying to connect. But dominating a group conversation can sometimes come across differently than intended. Australian social interactions often involve a kind of back-and-forth rhythm. You contribute, you listen, you let someone else contribute, then you jump back in. So if you want to make a good impression, don't worry about being the most interesting person in the room. Be interested in the people around you. Ask questions. Listen. Give other people space. And here's something Americans sometimes discover. You don't need to tell the biggest story. Sometimes the best social move is simply giving someone else the chance to tell theirs. Number 4. Don't confuse Australian casualness with a lack of rules. Australia has a reputation for being relaxed. And yes, in many situations, Australians can be very casual. But casual doesn't mean anything goes. There are still expectations about how people behave in public, how they treat others, how they cue, how they communicate, and how they respect shared spaces. An American might see people dressed casually, joking around, or behaving informally and assume the social rules are loose. Then they accidentally cross one. The problem is that many of these rules aren't written down. They're learned through experience. That's why Australia can be confusing for visitors. You might think, everyone is so relaxed, so surely nobody cares. Then you do something small and suddenly realize someone definitely noticed. The lesson is simple. Relaxed doesn't mean careless. You can be casual while still respecting the people around you. And that brings us to number 3. Because this one can completely change how an American interprets an Australian conversation. Before I continue with do well to like, comment, subscribe for you. Not to miss your next part.